So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this concept of hacking mindfulness and how a bunch of people from the video game industry came together to do that. But I'm also very inspired by this concept of this conference title with Games for Change, and I want to talk about just my own experience with games. I've had a big career in the video game industry. I've been one of few women who have run big tech initiatives. You can tell how long I've been in the industry by all the hair and weight changes in the montage right there. And you know, certainly I could give a whole talk on just being a woman working in this field. And some of that I will touch upon, but it's been an amazing journey for me. Video games have given me a wonderful life, and it's something that I'm very honored to be a part of. I started off my journey really with all the cards stacked against me. This is me and my little sister, Vicky. We were two peas in a pod as kids, and our mother struggled with drug addiction and mental illness for most of our lives. She passed away a couple of years ago. And Vicky and I found ourselves shuffled around through various relatives and in many ways had to take care of ourselves. And I felt a tremendous responsibility for my little sister as the older one, the older sibling. And I think a lot of the skills that I am, known for today of figuring out hard things really resulted from having a checked out mother and this responsibility of my younger sister and an even younger half-sister. My sister ended up, that picture right here is the last picture of us together. She ended up dying of a drug overdose in 2012, so she followed in my mom's footsteps. And I've often wondered why I didn't follow suit. And what I've been able to realize is that my love for video games was one of the first things that really, I think, supported me. I was that girl that would escape to the video game arcade and I could play Asteroids on the same quarter for a really long time, and all the boys would stand around and go, whoa. And I think it gave me a sense of pride and confidence, but it was also what I understand now, it helped me shut down the noise in my head. There's some science around how you can get someone into a flow state, and I think that's what I was experiencing as a kid. It was like this respite for me. And as console games started to emerge and PC games, I could find that I started to really identify with mission-based actions and also seeing myself as a hero, and there were some other things when I look back, like I learned a lot of skills through playing video games. It lowered the barrier to technology for me, because as I got interested in learning how to mod games, I was, learning coding aspects, and I was learning how to get online and connect to community servers, and I was figuring things out. And I think I learned all my project management skills in SimCity, and so it was something that I found was, one of the key differences between me and my sister is that this commitment that I had to play video games that she didn't have also gave me a very deep interest in technology that ultimately became where I started to focus my work life. And then the other thing that I think really helped me was it actually came out of a very difficult time. When I was around 14 and 15, I started to have my own problems, and it impacted me mentally to the point where I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. And it was through that process that I met a woman who was a therapist who wanted to help me. And she, rather than put me on medication, she actually taught me how to meditate. She taught me a breathing tactic first, And then she started to teach me meditation in our session because it had this immediate calming effect on me, the same way that just kind of getting into that flow state of playing a game when you're just right locked in. I found that there was something about meditation that quieted the noise in my head. And I think those two things are really the reason why I'm here today and why my sister is not. And then the last thing that I would point out is that woman's compassion of wanting to help me, even though I didn't have the resources even to pay her. She was working with me pro bono. There was something in me that she wanted to help. And I've often thought about how do we bring that all together? And that really, this foundation is what TRIPP was based upon. So as I started to get more in touch with, just being able to stop for a moment and make, I rewired my decision framework as a young person in peril. And I started to make better decisions in my life that were very different. It was almost like I watched my sister's life. It was an alternate reality movie of choices that I wasn't making, but that I should have been making. But one of the good choices I made was I fell in love with a man who was older than me, but very kind and compassionate. And throughout our journey together, he became this Buddhist activist, and he had a very deep meditation practice, and it exposed me to a lot of wonderful meditation teachers in Tibet and a lot of trips there. He built a monastery there and an orphanage in Vietnam, and he was an amazing person. And his teacher actually looked at me and said, I want to teach you how to meditate with your eyes open, and I want you to do it 5 minutes at a time, these little chunks. And it was that first meditation hack that really helped me, because rather than do the 20 minutes in the morning and then get in my car and the commute would wipe out any kind of peace of mind that I had, it was creating these little 5-minute reset buttons, the landing pad that I found changed my whole working life. Because prior to that, I was very reactive, especially being a female working, in the video game industry and in technology. I felt my buttons would often be pushed, when someone would talk over me or dismiss my ideas or even take them and represent, them as their own ideas. And I was just incredibly frustrated. And when I started to integrate these little 5-minute meditations throughout my day, I was being less reactive. I was also able to get in touch with more strategic thinking about how I could look at my journey as a video game. That I could play the game and not let the game play me. And so I found a very tactical way to apply meditation that wasn't woo-woo, and I started to see my career advance. And I had the good fortune of working with Nanea Reeves, who was one of the founding CEO of Oculus. And I was a very small investor in Oculus through that. We worked together at a game company, a cloud gaming company called Gaikai that is now powering the Sony PlayStation Now game streaming service. And when Brendan started Oculus, he invited me and my husband to come down and try it, as well as I brought a family member of mine and my co-founding partner of TRIPP, Zach Norman, who used to work at Activision and worked with me at a mobile game company called Jamdat that was ultimately acquired by Electronic Arts. So we tried the Oculus. It was our first time seeing it, and it was a very early version with the Crescent Bay demo, and we were blown away by this feeling of immersion. And that's my husband, Vic, with Brendan in the picture. And it was about 2 months after this picture was taken that Vic was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer. And we were told he had 8 months left to live, and he ended up being gone in 8 weeks. And I saw through that process how our our meditation practice really allowed us to stay very connected throughout that. And I also saw this resilience in me to walk through a life challenge that many people will experience. You know, if you live a big life, you definitely will experience the loss of a loved one. And I went through grieving. There was lots of time to grieve after he was gone. But I was able to use my meditation to stay really present with him while he was here. And we talked a lot about my life going forward and how he wanted me to be happy and to continue to flourish in life. And I also found through this journey that my work was really important to me. Not that it defined who I was, but it was this place that I found community, and I also could see myself as a maker, you know, and a builder. And I think that's a very important mindset for little girls in general to have. And I feel I got it from video games. You know, and you can see these little girls who grew up, they started off playing Minecraft and they grow up into young women going into career or colleges, universities on computer science tracks. I think it's that shift of seeing yourself as a maker that has to happen early. So as I thought about how to rebuild my life, I started to think about those three principles of video games, meditation, and compassion, and how they could all come together. And here I was in this clearing of, you know, being a mature adult without any responsibility to anyone but myself. I had spent my whole life taking care of my mother, my younger sister, my sick husband, and now how was I going to take care of myself? And there was this aspect, we decided, Zach and I got together, Zach Norman, my co-founding partner of TRIPP, and we said, let's make a game in VR. And we built like this little solitaire game, because every platform needs a good solitaire game. And we had one of the best solitaire games in mobile early days. And so we thought, let's do it in VR. And it was an interesting thing as we started to test this solitaire app just to experiment with 360 design. We had this feeling of calmness whenever we'd enter into VR and emerge from it. And that got us looking at the research. And there's been over the last 30 years a tremendous amount of research from people like Jeremy Bailenson and Skip Rizzo and Walter Greenleaf, who was here yesterday out of Stanford and other universities on the use case of VR on mental health issues. But the problem has been that the devices have always been really clunky or really expensive, and even the study data has a lot of issues because it's hard to implement different control groups or to get a participant base that could really, you know, return statistically significant data. But even then, it was still directionally interesting to us to come up with this concept of taking VR and forming a company around this concept of, you know, we said to each other, why don't we hack mindfulness and see if we can trigger the effects of meditation and help people to get into that state so that they can also see the benefits like I've had in my own personal life. I really feel like it's been a key element as to why I've even been able to thrive in my life. And we could see that the one inherent property that was necessary for that was the immersion of VR, because it seemed to have this multiplicative effect. And we even see that in how training data is retained through experience in much different ways than when you read it on a 2D screen. So we did some prototyping. We got our friend Andrea Djokovic, who has a pharmacology and neuroscience background, and he's been developing video games with us for a while. And we took a bunch of people from all these different industries, and Justin Beretta from the Glitch Mob heard about what we were doing and said, I want to come work with you. And he does all of our soundscapes with a very talented sound engineering team. And we raised money off that concept of creating mood-altering experiences. So can we change the way that you feel? And I will say that it's my sense that everything that I've done in my life and every experience, good and bad, I've gone through in my life has somehow prepared me to make this product. And so when you have that kind of sense of purpose, one, I have to be careful I don't take everything personally, even bad reviews, in a way, and get that rhino skin that I've had from playing video games, and also just really stay focused on this concept of how we can use tech to help people feel better. And so we started to, one of the things that a lot of people working in VR know is that the consumer install base has been slow to ramp. There was a lot of hype, and then we went through that trough of disillusionment, as the Gartner hype cycle talks about. And we thought, well, why don't we see where we can get the most impact? So we started to bring TRIPP into companies to help with employee stress. And these are people using our product who don't normally know that they want to interact with a VR device. They just want to take a more mindful, interesting, fun, engaging break throughout their day. So essentially, we've been creating our own market. And it's been amazing for us to see the reaction of people in normal America to this experience. And now we're also really focused on this idea, of mind-body interactions. And as the data comes out more and more on the importance and the benefits of a consistent mindfulness practice, how we can help people facilitate that. It's not that we're trying to replace mindfulness. What we've seen is that people have a hard time staying with it. And if we can use the immersion of VR to create this experience where you're just taking 8 minutes to connect to yourself, that's part of the behavior change. And so it's a really good use case for immersion. Humanity has been obsessed with fitness for your outer self, and we like to think of TRIPP as fitness for your inner self. And so that concept really helps us because it makes us look at measurement in ways. I think this is the best description. I showed it to Jeff Fowler from the Washington Post at CES. We weren't showing there. It was a private demo, and he picked us as one of his top picks there. But the description of meditation meets a video game meets a happy pill, I think is really what we were initially trying to achieve, and he got it as soon as he tried it, and that meant a lot to us. So this is some video from the experience, and there's a little bug flying around here, just like those birds. We use VR gameplay mechanics. We also have a mobile companion app that tracks your mood outside of the experience, and it also allows you to personalize it, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit more. One of the other things we knew that was really important was to bake in repeatability into the design of the product. So most of our development effort has been on creating this framework that allows the experiences to be generated procedurally. And every night at 11:11, we drop a new content bundle, and it repopulates the whole environment with new assets, sound, visuals. We use sound frequencies, some gameplay mechanics in the experience, and these are images from our focus trip. The other thing is we have a backend that starts to analyze. When you do TRIPP, on the beginning and the end of the experience, you self-report your starting mood, and then we take an endpoint mood. And they're based on validated scales that are used in the CBT community. And then because all of our assets are tagged, we start to understand which assets are performing better, which ones get the highest rating for the individual and different cohorts. We look at time of day variations, and we also start to understand the topics that are resonating with the person. And the ultimate goal is to get the data trained enough that the experiences will be generated to the individual. Right now, it's helpful to us. We start to understand, let's make more of this and less of that. So the data process flow of that constant feedback loop even optimizes our own development and art creation. So on this side, you'll see these are the things that feed into our machine learning. We get your in-app mood profiling with baseline and endpoint self-reported interface. We have all your usage patterns, the session assets, your rating, and then the mobile app gives you outside of the session mood profiling. So we can start to understand also your time of day trending. And this has been really interesting data for the corporations that we're supporting, but I think it'll be even more important for the individual to understand their own trends on how they feel throughout the day. I'm most excited about the integration of biosignals. Right now, we can pull from the mobile app, heart rate, and sync, two wearables. But the next wave of devices that will integrate biosensors into the devices themselves. So you can get a very clean pulse right here. And so if the gasket is modified to do that, and we know some devices will be coming out next year with that, but a very robust data set can be taken with the eye tracking lenses specific to pupil changes. So you can assess cognitive load as well as different stress responses and different emotional arousal scales from that. So I think a tremendous amount of innovation is going to happen in our industry. I'm excited for our own journey with it, but the integration of biosensors and having game content and experiential content, spatial reality content for AR to deal with these biosignals, I think is going to be tremendously exciting. Our goal is really, it's less about VR mindfulness, but can we create a toolkit that helps you change the way that you feel in the middle of different points of the day so that you can improve your performance. So we're live with Focus Now in corporations. We're getting ready to push Calm out, which has theta wave targets, sound frequencies, and delta, so you can choose to use the delta mode at night as more of a sleep preparation tool. And then we're working on something that will help you feel more grounded before a presentation you're nervous about. That's 5 minutes and standing, and might use some Qigong tactics. I'll talk a little bit too about how we go through our research and development. We look at existing research and we make some assumptions. And then we prototype these ideas. And in our lab in Chicago, we use a neurable device hooked up to, it's got EEG on the back of the head, and it's through an HTC Vive. And it's got Tobii lenses, so we can get eye tracking data. And we just look directionally as we prototype, are we kind of hitting the areas that we want? And then we do self-reports. We have people come in on Fridays and try out these little prototypes. It's been incredibly fun to have that feedback loop, and then our live product gives us ongoing feedback. And then we are very actively participating in studies. One thing I would throw out to this community, we're also very interested in licensing product that looks like-minded, that can be part of our catalog. We just licensed a product. We haven't announced it yet. I think I'm going to announce it right now. We licensed a product that Walter developed called Lumen, which was released a while ago and also tested at the Stanford Children's Hospital. And it's been integrated and live in our catalog for about a month now. And it's been fun to work with developers that we see have similar mission to ours and see if we can help you get a distribution channel out into these environments. So the other thing we're really interested in, so these are the assessments that we can, we have these web-based interfaces at the beginning and the end of the experience, and you can put in different scales. Each experience can have its own scale, and we can collect data. And then the mobile app also allows us to collect more data, so we can, like 23andMe does, push more mood profiling down. They're really helpful to have these tools for study participation because we're collecting info in real time, and then the researcher can also collect their data through their interfaces. So much like I've been sleeping a lot better since I got this Aura ring. It's a plug for Aura. And I think mostly it's because I'm seeing the trends and I'm tracking, at a more granularity, the attributes of my sleep. We want to do the same for mood and allow you to get back control over how you feel. If you think about it, a lot of us have grown up being marketed to that we don't have control over our feelings and we're triggered even by different points of view to the point where we can't function. I want to help change that and give us back our power. And so we've had people analyze our data, and directionally, some of the proof of concept data looks very encouraging. It has not been validated by third parties yet. We're in that process, so we don't make any claims. Our goal is really to work with the scientific community to help us in research. So I hope to come back next year and share some of those findings. What we do think that we are doing when we talk to people like Walter Greenleaf and others is that there's a vagus nerve activation that, some people call it the Oprah nerve, or it gets triggered by compassionate images and concepts, as well as it can be manually stimulated as well. It has a huge tonic effect because all your organs come off this nerve. It's one of the largest in the body. And so we've been told that that's one of the things that we're probably, why we're getting the positive response that we get when people try our product. And the other thing we really want to go after, and I don't feel that we've hit it as strongly in our current product, which focuses more on relaxation tactics, but the next level is, can we get you more into that flow zone and really work within that dynamic of the skill challenge ratio that is known to be that flow trigger. I think that'll be very much more gameplay driven. We have some elements of gameplay mechanic in our 2 experiences that we've created now, even making breath a little bit of a game. But I really want to get into that sort of rhythm flow state that can really get you there. I found huge benefits for me as a kid in peril from getting into that state, and I really think it helped me navigate some big life situations. I'll just talk a little bit about our distribution model, because it's, you have to think about these things as businesses too. It's one thing to have lofty goals, but if they can't make money, it's going to be hard for us to stay around as a company. And I just feel a great responsibility to ensure that the people who work for us can continue to work on something that they're incredibly motivated by. So we go into corporations with a charging kiosk that has all of the hygienic materials integrated into it. And then now we're going to add a little tear-off sheet so you can go to TRIPP.com and buy a take-home version. We'll even bundle an Oculus Go if you don't have a VR device and ship it out to you. We don't make any money off of that. It's just we want people to get access to the devices. And we're starting to pop up in different wellness centers around the country. Here's a fitness influencer getting VR doing TRIPP while she's getting a vitamin IV drip, which is definitely a thing right now. We've been starting to get acknowledged, which is very meaningful, and you can see some of the research partners now. We have 3 active studies, one in addiction recovery, which is very meaningful to me, given the fact that I lost my sister to an overdose. And we have one that just kicked off today in organizational stressors that's run by FIU. And the next one that we're gonna work on one in New York in a psychiatric hospital. But I think my most favorite user is this man in Honolulu. His name is Ron. He's 81 years old, and he's got stage 4 liver cancer, which is the same disease my husband died from. And he tried TRIPP, and he insisted on taking it home. He would not leave without me giving it to him. And you know, the team set him up, and we have this feature where you can personalize the experience and see your own life images coming back to you. And when he saw his own life in there, it had this profound effect on him. And the team comes in every day and they look at his data, and you can see he's using our app sometimes 4 or 5 times a day. And he's been doing that since November. We get worried when we don't see him using the app, and he said it's been tremendously helpful to him. And I think, you know, if we don't do anything else as a company, but we just made that one person's life different and improved, you know, we've done a good job with our time here. And so with that, I'd just like to say thank you for listening, and I'm so inspired by this community, and I wish you all the best, and thank you for listening.